The red highlighted island that you are looking at is often referred to as the Great Britain, United Kingdom, or the UK. This country today spans only 94,000 square miles, but just 100 years ago, it ruled over a quarter of the world's land. From North America to Africa, the Middle East, South Asia, East Asia, and Australia, the British ruled almost a third of the world's population. In all of human history, perhaps no empire ever reached such a peak. It was the empire on which the sun never set. But the world's most powerful empire has today reached a point where it is going through the worst economic crisis in its history. According to 2024 stats, the UK's debt has reached 99.5% of its GDP, whereas if you look at its neighbouring countries, Ireland's debt is at 43%, while Germany's debt is 64% of its GDP. Gang violence and homelessness are at their highest in the past 30 years. In just the past 10 years, homelessness in the UK has increased by 50%. High salaries and wages, which used to attract people from all over the world to London, have been stagnant at the 2008 level for the past 16 years. While inflation today is the highest in the last 40 years. Thousands of skilled workers are leaving the UK in search of better salaries. 10 million people are living in absolute poverty in world's 6th largest economy.
2 million people in the UK go without food for at least one day in a month. And if you remove London from the UK, the country is as poor as Mississippi, which is the poorest state of America.
The NHS, which was an example to the world of what healthcare should be like, is now in a dire state where 8 million critical care patients are on waiting list. And it's not just healthcare, all government departments are in crisis, whether it's law and order or transportation. UK today has become the worst performing developed nation in the world. Just a few days ago, Britain was literally burning. People were setting cars on fire and throwing stones at houses. Things were so bad that even Elon Musk tweeted that civil war in UK is inevitable. So what happened to the most powerful country in human history? What mistakes did Britain make to end up in such a severe crisis today? Let's find out in this video. Before we dive deeper into the video, I have a small request. If you enjoy my content, please consider subscribing to my channel. I put in a lot of effort to create these videos, but many of them don't get the reach they deserve. Your support would mean the world to me. This story starts in 2016 when the UK decided that it would leave the European Union. On the 23rd of June 2016, a special referendum was held in which 51% of the British people voted to leave the European Union. And this was the point where the crisis in the British economy began. This process of UK leaving the European Union is called Brexit. Now here you need to understand a very important part of history, and that is how and why the European Union was formed. When World War II ended, European countries realised that if they kept on fighting among themselves, all their resources and money would be exhausted on building armies and defending their borders. Because if we look at the map of Europe, two things become very obvious. First, all the European countries are small in size, and secondly, they all are interconnected. European leaders thought that if they continue to behave as separate countries, their conflicts would never end and they would never progress. That's why, in 1952, 6 countries, Belgium, France, Germany, Italy, Luxembourg, and the Netherlands, came together to form the European Coal and Steel Community to massively boost their economies. These countries greatly benefited from forming this community. For example, after World War II, France needed coal and steel to rebuild its infrastructure, and Germany provided these resources at very cheap rates. In this way, France got raw materials at a lower cost, and Germany easily found a buyer for its natural resources, which was also very close to its borders, so transportation costs were almost negligible. Similarly, Italy, Belgium, the Netherlands, and Luxembourg gained access to the markets of large population centres like Germany and France. So all in all, these 6 countries traded with each other without taxes or conflict, and their economies started growing rapidly. Seeing their success, other European countries also began to join this community, and by 1993, 12 countries had joined, and the European Union had become the world's most powerful organisation. Some of the world's superpowers were part of the European Union, and this was the biggest leverage of European Union. The biggest advantage of being in the European Union was that people living in Europe could freely move to any other European country, work there, start businesses, or even build homes there. Similarly, goods could be traded easily between all countries without any taxes or fees. For example, a furniture seller in Greece could easily sell his furniture in the UK without paying any additional tax or fees. Another advantage of being a member of the European Union was that when a country negotiated trade deals with non-European countries, it was not negotiating alone, but on behalf of the entire European Union. And obviously, having such a powerful organisation backing them gave each country tremendous negotiation power. So with so many benefits of being a member of the European Union, why did the UK decide to leave? There are three reasons for this. The first reason is that the UK felt that being in the European Union benefited the EU more than it benefited the UK. For example, between 2012 and 2016, Europe caught 750,000 tonnes of fish from British waters, while Britain caught only 90,000 tonnes of fish from European waters. Similarly, in 2013, the UK's contribution to the European Union's budget was £17 billion, but in return, it only received £6.3 billion. So, the British felt that the other European countries were taking advantage of them. The second reason was immigration. Countries like Poland, the Czech Republic, and Hungary had now joined the European Union, and because Eastern Europe was much poorer than Western Europe, people from these countries started immigrating to the UK. We will soon make a video on this topic, explaining how Eastern Europe became so poor and Western Europe became so rich. Due to this migration, the foreign population in the UK, which was 5.3 million in 2004, had increased to 9.5 million by 2021. Similarly, in 2010, a civil war broke out in the Arab world, and Europe opened its borders to Arab immigrants, with most of them heading to the UK. Here too, Britain felt that the European Union's decision was impacting them the most. This influx of migrants began to strain the UK's public infrastructure, job opportunities, wages, and everything else, leading people to develop the belief that the root cause of all the problems was the European Union's policies. As a result, feelings of sovereignty began to rise among the British. They started to believe that Britain could make better decisions without the European Union, and they don't have to bear the burden of the EU's decisions. These triggers led to a referendum in 2016, and Britain separated from the European Union. However, contrary to expectations, Brexit had a very negative impact on the UK. According to a report by the Bank of England, between 2016 and 2021, investment in the UK fell by 25% after Brexit, and then the crisis worsened with the onset of COVID-19 and the Russia-Ukraine war. On one hand, investment was declining, and on the other hand, Britain was providing heavy funding to Ukraine against Russia, while at the same time, due to energy sanctions, it could no longer buy oil and gas from Russia. And on top of this, after Brexit, the UK's trade was severely hit because before Brexit, the European Union was the UK's largest trading partner. 48% of the UK's imports came from the European Union, but there were no customs duties or taxes on these imports. However, after Brexit, British goods could no longer enter Europe freely. To correct this mistake, Britain signed a free trade agreement with the European Union in 2020, which allowed it to trade with Europe without any taxes or customs duties, but perhaps it was too late by then. Now, the biggest disadvantage for Britain is that it is a service-based economy, and such economies are very vulnerable during financial shocks and economic crises. For example, during the 2008 financial crisis, Europe and the Western world suffered a major blow, but China, being a manufacturing-based economy, did not suffer as much as America or Europe. That's why in 2008, where there were massive layoffs in the financial and IT industries, companies like Nestle and P&G were unaffected because they produce essential items like mineral water, soap and razors, etc., which people cannot easily stop buying. Similarly, the manufacturing sector creates more jobs than the service sector. Another major drawback of Brexit is that the UK is facing a severe labour shortage today. According to stats, the UK has a shortage of 30,000 nurses. On one hand, the UK's currency is devaluing, foreign investment is falling, while on the other hand, the UK does not have enough funds to spend on its basic healthcare facilities. To make matters worse, the European countries don't care about the UK's situation because it was UK who left the European Union. Unemployment is high, inflation is constantly rising, and as a result of this, resentment is growing among British nationals, and they are venting this anger on immigrants or people of other nationalities. I don't think such a situation has ever been witnessed in the UK before. The UK is in a deep mess today. Wrong decisions and selfish thinking have brought Britain to this point. Who knows that we might soon witness the collapse of the Great British Empire with our own eyes. These are all the sources we consulted for today's video. See you in the next video with another interesting topic. Take care.